So it seems pretty clear to me from your personal stories and the work that you do, from Ambassador Vivier's stories about the compelling evidence that exists today on women's potential, their opportunity, the high return on investment we get from investing in girls and women. Ambassador Vivier talked about Larry Summers' research, Robert Zellick from the World Bank talking about girls and women being smart economics. It seems like there's been a lot of change and emerging awareness about the fact that this is something that the world should do. So it strikes me that we're moving from the why invest in girls and women. People are kind of starting to get that. Why should we invest? The facts are there, the evidence is there. So I'd like to get the panel's thoughts on how do we take the momentum from why invest to, okay, this is how you invest. Let's start talking about taking action. So Sherry, again, starting with you.
Yeah.
When someone asks you, well, how do I invest in girls and women? We get this question a lot at the Nike Foundation. I get why, tell me how. Mm-hmm. How do you respond to that?
I can't help but think that before joining USAID a couple months ago, I was the president of Calvert Foundation, which does have a retail investment product. So for people who are interested in literally investing, there are increasing numbers of tools. And you want to go online to microplace.org, which is a web-based platform that eBay has put together. Microplace. There's many different organizations and investing options for people who literally want to invest in microfinance overseas, and as well as different kinds of efforts here in the United States. So as a direct answer to that question, you might think about some of those web-based tools, number one. But from a USAID standpoint, a lot of the investing that we're looking at doing is really in some ways pushing some of the frontiers of the microenterprise and microfinance field, and we're really pushing it in two different directions. One of them is like, how do we invest in the poorest of women? Because what we're learning, there's been a lot of great experience with microfinance and microcredit, but we're learning if you really want to reach and invest in the poorest women, and particularly poor women farmers, they need savings products. They need insurance products. They need a range of different kinds of financial services. And so a lot of the agenda for my office moving forward is to begin to really concentrate on some of these other kinds of financial tools that will complement the credit services, but might be more appropriate for the really most vulnerable women out there. So that's one area. Another area that for us is a bit of a frontier is once again linking small women-run enterprises with other women-run small and growing businesses. Here we had Ambassador Vivier talking about the role of small and medium enterprises that are generating jobs. But they do a lot more than just generate jobs. In many parts of the world, particularly once again getting back to agriculture, your individual smallholder needs to depend upon there being a marketing, an organization that buys their product and gets it to the ultimate market or process their product, so that by focusing on services to small and medium enterprises, you're actually creating a much broader economic effect that helps to aggregate the production of many, many small producers. So I think what you're sort of seeing from what's next and what we're focusing on at USAID, not that we're stepping away from the well-known path of traditional microenterprise, financial services, et cetera. We are trying to expand those horizons, focusing on what the poorest women need by way of different products and services, as well as also looking up how do you link women into the market economy, into the formal economy. And there we think small and growing businesses will have an important role to play.
Okay, great. And Marika, what have you seen as effective solutions or programming at Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
I have a feeling you're going to hear a lot of repetition from us, which is a good sign that the answers are out there. We just need to go and pursue them. But at Coca-Cola, we've been really grateful to benefit from a collaboration with Jane Nelson's institute at the Kennedy School at Harvard. And as we've embarked on this journey of trying to understand what barriers women face in our global business system, we've partnered with the Kennedy School and with the International Finance Corporation to explore and better understand some of these barriers. As we all know, you need to ask the women themselves who run small businesses and medium enterprises what they think the barriers are, and only then can you go about attempting to address them. So that's the path that we've taken. Before I explain to you the results, I'll just mention that the overarching effort that we're engaged in now, 5 by 20, which has been mentioned a couple of times already today, is our 10-year initiative that aims to reach 5 million women in our global business system. We're in over 200 countries worldwide. We work with millions of women every day as our business partners who distribute and sell our product, and in doing so, make a living for themselves and their families. And we're very much interested in identifying the barriers they face, in dialogue with them, and then investing and partnering with others in addressing those barriers so that they can be more successful and so that our business benefits, which is, we think, a truly sustainable way to go about an activity like this. So to just touch briefly on the barriers that the research that Harvard and IFC conducted identified for us, they were largely in 3 areas. And this is as a result of dialogue with these women. The first was around financing and access to financing. The second was around business skills and the ability to enhance one's own business knowledge. And the third was around access to mentors and networks of peers. So just briefly elaborating on each of those 3 areas, the financing piece, I think, comes up constantly, and Milan gave her incredible quote about the best business ideas die in bank parking lots. I think we've also seen, it's been validated through our own dialogue with small businesses in the Coca-Cola system, that many women have a true entrepreneurial spirit and do want to grow their businesses, but aren't sure where to begin when they need capital to do that. The second piece around business skills, we heard time and time again that even just the most basic business skills-oriented interventions and education can make a huge difference to women in small business. Something as simple as dividing your books for your business and your personal finances. Just doing that can help illuminate whether or not you're actually making a profit in your business, whereas before it might have been kind of muddied and was difficult to see. So that's a specific example that a woman in our business system raised to us, and obviously a very low-cost way to intervene and help her be more successful. And in the third area of networks and mentors, we've seen women raise this point, and very inspiring examples of where they've proactively reached out and formed networks of their own with their peers so that they can share what their challenges are, help each other out, lend a hand. And by doing so, they're able to gain greater prominence in their communities and grow their businesses in ways that they may not have been able to before. They may have felt somewhat isolated. So we're excited about that third barrier as well. And I think, just in closing, it's important to realize that while there probably will be a lot of shared ideas about the barriers, I think we need to continue this dialogue with women in the United States and emerging economies to hear from them what the barriers are, because I think we still do have a lot to learn. And certainly speaking from the Coca-Cola perspective, we'd like to continue that conversation.
Thank you. Janine, what have you seen on the ground that has proven to be effective and powerful?
Well, I'm very much grassroots because we're sort of there. We commute. So, when we've had people travel with us, which is really our focus to get people to go and see, we don't have big solutions yet. I'm not sure there are big solutions. We talk about models a lot. You want to create a model and be able to move that model somewhere else, and it doesn't work somewhere else because it's different somewhere else. So it's really looking at what works in the individual areas. And what I've been very encouraged is we've had people travel with us. As I said, ordinary, everyday people coming. I had a group of women travel with me to Kenya a couple years ago, and they were coming to serve. They didn't know what they were going to do, but they were knitters. And so they saw a group of women that we were working with, and they said, I wonder if we could teach them how to knit. It was a skill set that they had that they loved doing. And so off we went to Nairobi to buy a bunch of wool and brought it back. And these women, were sitting down to teach, not me, but the people with us, sitting down to teach them how to knit. And it was like that. They're thinking it would take 5 days to teach them how to knit a scarf. By the end of the day, each of the women had a scarf made. Now, the flip side of that is, what do you do with those scarves? And the economic piece there has to be a market. And that's the part that we are good at. We understand capitalism, we understand marketing. This piece of jewelry was made by those same women. It's made out of horn. The earrings are made out of something else in Africa. And getting the women to encourage them just by sitting with them. Having these women who are knitters sit with the women and knit. And it's a small step, but now, as soon as these women get wool, they're knitting up a storm. And now we have a company called Helping Orphans and Widows. So it's How Jewelry. And they make the jewelry, we bring it back here and we sell it, not individual pieces, but we would go into a corporation like UPS and set up a table at UPS and do a jewelry party, or do it locally in your home or region. And all of a sudden, women in Africa are eating, and they're feeding their children. And it may not be a huge initiative, but $200,000 or $300,000 later, you've got hundreds and hundreds of children who are eating, and they're in school, and the women are encouraged. And I think it's not just about the economic piece, it's not just about the money, it's that face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball, letting a woman around the world know that you care, that we're not just sitting in our big fancy houses, that we really do care. And we may not understand their whole situation, but we're willing to sit down and listen to try to learn, because that's the first step.
I think that's so true. Just being seen as a human being with potential and being validated that way has such a transformative impact. Just that act alone of just, saying, I understand you and I believe in you. So that's great, Jeanette.
I can just add, in the Siswati language, the word, when you greet someone, the word is sawubona, and it literally means I see you. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just beautiful that when you greet someone, you say, I see you, I acknowledge your existence.
Can you say that word again? We should all say that.
Okay, sawubona.
Sawubona.
And the response would be yebo, which means yes, thank you for seeing me. So sawubona.
Sawubona.
Well done.
Yebo.
Yebo.
Okay. Wenchi, how's your organization actually directing others to invest? I know you do a lot of mobilizing of other partners.
I think we at the State Department, our role is a little bit different. We're constantly thinking how to change systematically at the system level. So, for example, you said, we've pretty much recognized why it's important to invest in women and girls. But the truth is, unfortunately, most governments still don't really understand why it's important to invest in women and girls. So a large chunk of our work is to actually communicate and convince those leaders that it is indeed important to invest in women and girls, and why. And I think Ambassador Revere's speech pretty much articulates, in my mind, very well, why it's important. It's the economic argument, it's the business argument. In some way, it's to your own interest to actually invest in women and girls, because for any governments who want to govern your country, you need a stable society. You would like to see prosperous economies. You want to see economic growth. You want to see vibrant civil society. So that's the way we approach those governments. And then when it comes down to how, this is the leisure that we have sitting in the government, because all the best ideas will come to us. All foundations like Nike, Harvard, or Coca-Cola would want us to know what they're doing. So what we're seeing is really the best solutions and the best models. And our role is to convene those various good ideas and to highlight them and even bring up to scale. I think that's what the government's role should be. And first of all, creating an environment that would enable all these private efforts. Whatever you're doing, that's all wonderful, and keep on doing it. And let us know what kind of environment we can create for you. So for example, if your company is investing in somewhere in, let's say, Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, let's just use that as an example, and there are all these kinds of environments that you may not like, whether it's corruption, governance, or community development. That's when we can come in and say, we'd be happy to conduct diplomacy and engage the Vietnamese government or whoever the government is to help you create an environment that will allow you to do your work, carry on your work. And it's not just business, it's the same as doing development and foreign assistance. That's what we do the best. So I think in terms of how, it's really about first articulating the best business case and the best way to convince governments that it's worth your while to invest in your own people. And it's not just rhetorics. It's really about putting in the money and the resources. We all know that it's very easy to put in policy or laws. It's just written on the paper. What it really shows is if you look at the budget, if there is real money behind it to really support the implementation of those programs.
Thank you. Jane, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to invest in girls and women?
Well, I think I'm focusing particularly on the role of companies in investing in girls and women, which is my passion. I think regardless of what industry sector you're in, what size the company is, whether you're in the United States or in Uganda, I think there's three things that any company can do and should really think about doing. And the first is the impact of the core business and your value chains. And the ambassador spoke about it. Marika gave examples. And that every single company, we've still got so much space to go in this, or distance to go in this country in terms of equal opportunity for women in the workplace, let alone women leaders. And so really focusing on the internal, developing your own women leaders and giving them potential, I think, is very important. But then also looking, as Coca-Cola has done, but even medium-sized companies have supply chains and value chains, which might be local, they might be global. But what is the demographic of women in those value chains if you have products that can empower women? And I think we talked about credit, obviously technology. The next room they're talking about water. And water, it empowers women, clean water in terms of health in developing countries, but it also empowers them economically because it frees them up to do other things if they've got access to clean water. So I think the first thing is what a company can do through its core business. And if you're an NGO working with a company or university working with a company, push them. It's not just the philanthropy, although I'll come to that, but what can you do with your core business? Secondly is the philanthropy and volunteering. And I think that the power of corporate America's philanthropy and volunteering is incredible. The Hudson Institute they have a study every year that some of you might know called the Index of Global Philanthropy. And they found, I think it was 2008, that American companies sent $7.7 billion US in philanthropy and volunteering and product donations to developing countries. The United Nations Development Programme's operating budget for the same year was about $5.2 billion. So American companies, just through their philanthropy, not through their investment, but just through their philanthropy, and just companies, let alone all the individual examples like Janine's, and I'm sure many in the room who are doing it individually. So the power, I think, of both corporate and individual philanthropy and that personal engagement and connection with women in developing countries, but in low-income communities in this country, I think is enormous, and harnessing employee volunteers as part of that. And then I think the third thing that companies can do, and I think even smaller, medium-sized companies can do this, is have a public policy voice around these issues. Companies lobby on all sorts of things. We should be lobbying in this country and internationally for women's economic empowerment. And I'd like to pay tribute to the Nike Foundation on that front, because I was at some of the World Economic Forum meetings in the early days where even getting a meeting down a corridor on adolescent girls was a challenge. And you were an example of a company who just, you were focused, you stuck with it, and you said, we've got to get this onto the global agenda. Sherry and the Calvert Foundation launched the Calvert Women's Principles for investment. And again, for a long time, they were just the Calvert's Principles, and they pushed, and now the United Nations Global Compact has adopted them as the UN principles for women's investment. So I think two examples just on this panel of two companies that have said, we want to advocate for women, and by being really persistent, you can do that. And companies, smaller companies, can do it in your local community, through Rotary clubs and through local government. And so it doesn't have to just be the big, as Janine, as you said, it doesn't have to just be the big multinational companies. I think that public advocacy voice is important as well. So those would be my three sort of what you can do through your core business and value chains, and if you're working with companies, how you can get them to really harness their core business through the philanthropy and volunteering, and then think consciously, what can we do on the public advocacy front.
Super powerful, super practical. Thank you, Jane.